Masechet Pesachim, Daf 60. We're halfway through. So we have a very interesting, beautifully structured sugya. We're going to see a Mishnah that mentions 4 activities that have to be done, are essential for every sacrifice. And when you do these activities, not only the action is important, but also the intention. You have to do it with proper intention. If you do it with the wrong intention, then it invalidates the sacrifice. We learned this from this pasuk that says, "Bayom hashilishi lo yedaseh." Some sacrifice that you have to eat for 3 days. If you have in mind that for 2 days, if you have in mind you're going to eat it for 3 days, then it's invalid. Lo yechashev lo pigul yihiyeh. So this word yechashev, which will mean it will not be considered. We're reading it as lo yachshov. You're not allowed to think of the improper intention while you are sacrificing and doing these 4 activities. Okay, so that's a basic rule that we'll see. And the question is, what if you do it with for the proper intention and for improper intention at the same time, or alternating? And then we'll see 2 questions that the Gemara will get into based on that. All right, let's start with the Mishnah. We'll see what we're talking about. HaPesach shechato shelo lishmo v'kibel v'halach v'zarak shelo lishmo, or lishmo v'shelo lishmo, or shelo lishmo v'lishmo pasul. Okay, Korban Pesach, you have to slaughter it. That's the first activity that is essential, with a proper intention, meaning for the purpose of a Pesach. While you're slaughtering, you say, I'm slaughtering this so that it will be a Korban Pesach. If you had a different intention, you take a Korban Pesach that you designated before as a Korban Pesach, and you say, I'm going to slaughter this as a peace offering, as a shalamim, then it's invalid, right? Even though you did everything correctly, just by thinking or by saying. That's a machloket, whether it's you have to verbalize it or even by thought. The Mishnah just doesn't say either way. It sounds like maybe even just thinking about the wrong thing makes it no good. Okay, that's number 1. Second one, kibel. The second thing one does with the blood is, as soon as the neck is cut, that blood that comes out, which is the life blood, has to be collected in a bowl. So that's the collection of it is essential, and that also has to be done with intention that it will be a Passover sacrifice. Vehalach, that's the taking it and walking it over to the Mizbeach from the place that you slaughter it. That is also an essential part of the service, has to be done with proper intention. Vezarak, and that's the throwing onto the Mizbeach like we have here. Any of these that are done with intention for a different sacrifice, the sacrifice is invalid. Okay, so that's the first 4. Notice how it mentions the first one separately, and then the other 3 altogether. But what it means is any one of these individually, right, will invalidate the whole thing. Now, what if you did it lishma and shelo lishma? In other words, you say, I'm bringing this, I'm going to slaughter this as a Passover sacrifice and also as a shalamim, right? You say opposite things it makes no sense. If you do that, what is the case? Because you did say the right thing, but you also said the wrong thing, right? Or the other way around. First you say it's going to be a peace offering, and then you say it will be a Passover offering. No good, right? Even though you said the right thing in there, you also said the wrong thing. So it's out. Okay. Kesad shelo lishma v'shelo lishma. Now it will elaborate. What does that mean? How so? L'shem Pesach l'shem shalamim. If you have intention, at first there'll be Korban Pesach, and then you say, no, I think it'll be Korban Shalamim. No good. Or Shelo Lishma V'Lishma L'Shem Shalamim L'Shem Pesach. And similarly, first you have the wrong intention, and then you have the right intention. It's also invalid. Okay. So that's the first. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to ask about this case. You see here we mentioned these 4 avodot, these 4 services. When you have this proper and improper intention, do they mean that this would be, let's say, shechita I did with proper intention, and then Kabbalah with improper intention, the receiving, right? Or is it within one service? While I'm slaughtering it, I had both intentions in mind, first one and then the other. All right, it's not really clear from the Mishnah which one it means, right? And at first it says all any of these that you're done without intention, and then it says with and without. Does that mean along successive ones or within the same one? Okay, so that's the question that we start off with. Was it within one activity or not? Pesach, and within one. So we're going to see attempted proofs that it does mean in fact within one activity. While doing shechita, first I say it's for Pesach, and then I say it's not for Pesach. We're going to attempt 4 proofs, 2 from our Mishnah, the beginning of our Mishnah, the end of our Mishnah, and then from the next Mishnah that we're going to see on tomorrow's daf, part 1 and part 2. None of these proofs will be conclusive. Okay, but let's see the setup of the question. Rav Papa, ba'avoda achat tenan or b'shtei avodot tenan, is when we say mixed intention, is that mixed intention within one activity or over the span of 2 activities, that one of them was good and one of them is no good? Okay, here's the deeper essence of the question. Ba'avoda achat tenan v'Rabbi Yosehi damar af bigmar devarav adam nitpas. If you say that we're talking about within one activity, then this would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef, in a kind of similar case, talks about someone who says this animal is going to be a burnt offering and a peace offering. And so he says both of those things. So Rabbi Yosef says his entire statement has to make sense, both the beginning and the end. And therefore, even though it's contradictory, because it can't be both a burnt offering and a peace offering, the second statement that he says still takes effect, and therefore that animal will have the stringencies of both a burnt offering and a peace offering, which are contradictory and impossible. He ends up having to let it go to waste, have a mum, and then buy other ones in its stead. But anyway, he says you take the entire statement as valid. Because Rabbi Meir disagreed with him, and he said, you take the beginning of the statement, right? The beginning of the statement, he said, this is a burnt offering. That's it. It gets a burnt offering status. Even if afterwards he said, and also a peace offering, doesn't matter. Since the part B of the statement makes no sense, we just leave it out. Okay, so if I give you something, I say, can you take this to New York and also Los Angeles, right? So it doesn't make sense. You can't take it both ways. So then the Yosef would say, both are effective, and therefore the whole thing makes no sense. And I have to do something, I have to, split it into 2. The Yirmiah says, just take the first thing I said, do that, and you don't have to worry about the second part of it. Okay, so if we say that the Mishnah's mixed case is talking about one activity, and the one activity is still invalid, that means that both statements apply to that one activity, and that makes that one activity invalid, right? Because any one of the statements that I said there both take hold. Whereas according to Rabbi Meir, if I said for Pesach and then I said not for Pesach, doesn't matter. As long as the first one was okay, even if the second intention while I'm slaughtering is not okay, it still would be fine. So that would follow the Yosef. Or Dilma, the other side of Rav Papa's question, or maybe the mixed messaging is over the course of 2 things. First slaughtering for good intention, and then receiving the blood for wrong intention. And in that case, the Mishnah could be authored by anyone, including Rabbi Meir, because even he who said you take the beginning, the first half of the statement as valid, and you can ignore the second half, that's only when it's within one activity. But if the first activity was valid and the second activity I had invalid intention, that stands on its own and invalidates that activity, and therefore invalidates the entire sacrifice. Okay. Amre ahaya inema asher lo lishma ve'lishma ben ba'avoda achat ben b'shtei avodot ben Rabbi Meir ben Rabbi Yosef ifsir le mikamaita. Wait, so now this question of Rav Papa, which clause was he referring to in the Mishnah? Because the Mishnah first said lishma and then lo lishma, and then it said shelo lishma and then lishma. If he's referring to this clause, where he said shelo lishma first, in that case, everyone would agree. If you said the wrong intention first, then whether it's one activity or over the course of two activities, whether it's to be me'id or to be yoseh, once he starts off with improper intention, then for sure it's going to be bad. According to the Hadar be yoseh, name af bigmad devadav itpasa itle ela alishmo v'shelo lishmo mai. Right. So according to the Bimeir, he says this: the first statement that you say is only important. If the first statement is invalid, then surely the whole thing is invalid. Even according to the Bioseh, he doesn't say you follow the second statement, but rather both. Right. Both are effectuate, and therefore, if the first one's no good, then for sure the second one's no good either. Okay. So we're not even talking about that case. If you start off with improper intention, then the sacrifice will be invalid. The question of Rav Papa is if I start off with proper intention within the same activity, right? I'm slaughtering, and during the slaughtering, first I say this is for Korban Pesach. That's good, and then I say no, I'm going to make it for Shalamim, and that's not good. Can I ignore that statement, or not, like Meir would do, or can I? Or do I have to, or is that statement effective? According to the Bioseh, and therefore it would be pasul, and is that the author of the Mishnah? Okay, Ta Shema, first attempted proof from the Mishnah's language itself. HaPesach shechato shelo lishmo, v'kibel v'hilech v'zarak shelo lishmo, v'hechidame, iname kedekatane, lama li ad mechashev lekulahu, mekamaita ifsile. So when the Mishnah says, if I did shechita for improper intention, do I take this as an and I also received the blood and moved it and sprinkled it, all shelo lishma, the whole thing? Well, why do I need to each of these examples? Do I need to actually have all of them with improper intention? As soon as the first one is done without proper intention, the rest of them are all done, are all no good. Iname shechato lishma v'kibel v'hilech v'zarak shelo lishma. Iname shechato v'kibel v'hilech lishma v'zarak shelo lishma davya la shete avodot. So it must be that it's talking about or. If I did any one of the activities with improper intention, then the whole sacrifice is no good. Okay, that seems pretty clear. It seems to, and that would be the pshat of the Mishnah. Okay, Ema Sefa. Now, if we assume that, then let's apply the same thing to the continuation. Lishma v'shelo lishma. Right, when we say, and if it's a mixed intention, so hechidame inema b'shte avodot hainu resha. If it says I had the first one with proper intention and then without proper intention, that's the same as the resha. Resha said any one of them. If I sacrificed for Pesach and then I accepted the blood not for Pesach, right? That because we said any one of them. We said or. So then the mixed intention over two different activities is already something we spoke about. So what's the point of adding another case about mixed intention? Therefore, it only makes sense to interpret the Mishnah that the next clause of mixed intention is talking about within one, because you already told me that any single activity, if I had improper intention, is no good, any one of them. So I don't have to say a mixed intention over two. Therefore, it has to be mixed intention within one activity. So that would be a proof that Rav Papa's question that he means even within one activity it's no good, and that would be the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. That's attempted proof number one, but we reject it. No, we can explain the Mishnah that's talking about two activities. And the Resha, which mentioned each activity separately, is actually talking about another really interesting case. Let's say I did shechita, while I'm doing shechita, I'm thinking that this shechita will be for a peace offering. Then that's no good, that's invalid. But the next case is, what if while I'm doing shechita, I have in mind that when I do the sprinkling will be for a peace offering, right? While I'm doing shechita, I say the shechita is going to be for a Pesach offering. But while I'm doing shechita, I'm already anticipating that the zedikah will be for improper intention, right? That's what it's talking about, and that's no good. So that's the resha. The resha is all talking about while I'm doing the shechita and different improper intention I have during shechita about the next things coming up. And then the sefa, the mixed intention, is when I'm actually having improper intention while I'm doing the Kabbalah or Zerika. Okay, so that's possible. Sefa deka'eh b'shechita v'kachashib b'zrika. Right. So this is just continuing what we just said. The mixed intention section of the Mishnah is talking about when sefa deka'eh b'shechita v'kachashib b'zrika. Damar hareni shochet et Pesach lishmo lizrok damo shelo lishmo. וכמשמלן דמחשבים מעבודה לעבודה, והיינו בעיה דרב Papa. Okay, sorry, let me just rephrase what I explained before. The resha, let me look at the here. Okay, the resha, when it says Pesach, when you did Shalol Lishma, that's when I do Shechita itself. And I say, I'm going to do this for improper intention. Or I did Kabbalah for improper intention while I'm doing Kabbalah. Or during Zedikah, I do Zedikah for wrong intention. That's the first clause. The second clause, or Lishma Vishelo Lishma, is while I'm doing Shechita, I have in mind that the Shechita will be for Pesach, but the Zedikah will be improper. So it is two different intentions while I'm doing Shechita, but I'm talking about two different activities. That's what the Sefa is talking about. But none of these cases are mixed intention for that activity itself. So see, it doesn't address Rav Papa's question. Okay, so we rejected that. We're going to try number 2. Tashema. O shelo lishma velishma pasul. Yeah. Okay. So pasul. Hechidame. So now the next clause. Inema b'shte avodot hashta lishma v'shelo lishma amat pasul. Shelo lishma v'lishma mi ba'ya. Okay. So we're learning it from here from a redundancy in the Mishnah. Since you said that not for intention and for intention is pasul, so if it's talking about two different activities, so if shelo lishma and then lishma is pasul, then all the more so if it's lishma, shelo lishma first and then lishma. Would I have to even say it? If lishma first is no good, then certainly shelo lishma first is no good. Ela la ba'avoda achat u'midesefa ba'avoda achat resha nameh ba'avoda achat. That rather, since that would be redundant if it's talking about when I'm doing shechita, with having in mind that the zedikah will be for improper intention, right? Or if I have, then if that's no good, then for sure it's no good if I do shechita with improper intention, and I also have in mind that I'll do zedikah with proper intention. Wouldn't need to say that case. So rather, that can't be the explanation. Rather, it must be talking about mixed messages within the shechita itself. And since that this case is talking about two within one, so too the resha, when I do other way around, is also talking about mixed intentions within one, and still it's pasul, and that would answer Rav Papa's question. But we reject this too. Lo lam b'shte avodot bedinu de la istirich le. You're right, it is redundant, and I don't need to say that the case of when I did improper attention first. But since I mentioned one way, so just to fill out the parallelism, we mentioned the other way as well. And so you can't prove anything from that. Okay, third proof, which is from the next Mishnah. Tashema shechato shelo le'ochlav v'shelo limnuyav la'arelim v'latimein pasul. While I'm doing shechita, I have to have intention that it will be, I'm doing shechita for people that are capable of eating a kezayit. If someone is like allergic to roast beef or has no teeth or sick and they can't eat it, and I do shechita for them, just for them, no good, because it has to be eaten. Or people who are not registered. Korban Pesach, people have to come and register beforehand. So I have to have in mind those 10 people, 20 people, whatever it is, that register. If I have different people in mind, no good. If people who are uncircumcised or tameh, who are disqualified, they cannot eat korban pesach. If I have them in mind while I do shechita or kabbalah, pasul. Okay, so that's the next Mishnah. Now, hacha pishita ba'avoda achat. Obviously, this is talking about one. This is talking about one activity, right? Because I'm doing shechita. I have this in mind. So since the sefa, beforehand we were using resha and sefa as within Mishnah 1, beginning and end of it, but sefa just means the end. So now we're talking about the next Mishnah is sefa, this Mishnah is resha. So since the next Mishnah is talking about one activity, so too this one must be talking about within one activity having mixed improper intention. Wait, say wait, that's not the same. Just because the next Mishnah is talking about one activity, that's it's particular to the context there. Doesn't mean that this Mishnah has to be talking about one activity as well. Okay, so forget that one. Now, last proof, Tashema, le'ochlav v'shelo le'ochlav. I want to show you the Mishnah inside. Right, this is actually the next Mishnah. It mentions if I do shechita for people that they are not capable of eating a kezayit, it's no good. But what if I do shechita having in mind both people that can eat it and people that cannot eat it? Both people that registered and people that didn't register. Right? For people that are tameh and not tameh, people that are circumcised and uncircumcised, right? And have them both together. Kasher, that's okay, right? Because they're not actually self-contradictory. I'm having a lot of people in mind, as long as some of them are proper people and they'll be able to eat it. So because I included some improper people, that doesn't disqualify. So that's the next Mishnah where mixed intention is okay. Now, what would be what's exactly the case here? So maybe it's talking about two different activities, and the reason is because I had the improper intention during sprinkling. But that's okay, because let's say I have in mind that I'm sprinkling this Passover sacrifice for the sake of people who are not capable of eating it. That's okay, because sprinkling has nothing to do with eating. Only if I do shechita, which is about eating, I'm doing shechita, so it'll be now kosher to eat. Only that will make the sacrifice invalid if I have in mind for people who cannot eat it. And so that's why it's valid in this case, because it's over two. It's over two different activities, but one of the activities is zerika that has nothing to do with eating. If you interpret it that way, pasul. But if I did it within one, if I had in mind the mixed messages within shechita itself, then it would be no good if I have in mind for people that can eat and cannot eat. La pasla. However, we have a principle that we're going to see more later, that if I have, if only a few of the people that I have in mind cannot eat, it's okay. Because look, I'm always going to have a big group around that's going to register, and it doesn't. I don't require that every single person in the group is worthy of eating or can eat it. And so this leads to a wrong conclusion that a mixed message within shechita itself, mixed intention within shechita for those who can eat and those who cannot eat would invalidate. That's not true. Rather, this has to be in this sefa also is talking about within one activity, any of the activities. And since the sefa is talking about within one, so to the resha has to be within one. Okay, and now we answered Rav Papa's question, right? No, is that the same? Sefa achat, resha achat, or b'shtei avodot. It could be different. The sefa is talking about a different kind of case where I'm including some people that are tameh, some people are not tameh, right? I can include all those within one. It's not self-contradictory, and that could be kasher. Whereas the resha is talking about different types of improper intention, whereas for Pesach and not for Pesach, and that might be talking about over two different ones. And so in the end, we do not answer the question. So that's the conclusion of this section. We have 4 proofs, and none of them are conclusive. We still don't know whether, if one has mixed intention while doing shechita for Pesach and for Shelamim, whether it be good or not. Okay, and that leads to the next question, which is extremely interesting. This is a very special halacha regarding Passover sacrifice. Let's say I take an animal, a little lamb, and I designate this is going to be Pesach, a Passover sacrifice. And then the 14th of Nisan comes around, and I don't do shechita on it. I don't prepare it as a korban Pesach. Whatever, there was too many people dropped out, and they went to other groups, and we didn't need it. And so now Pesach is finished. Okay, now it's 2 weeks later, and I have this lamb that I designated as Pesach. What do I do with it? So the answer is I'm allowed to do shechita on it as long as I have improper intention. In other words, if I do shechita with intention that this is a Passover sacrifice, it's no good because it's not Passover anymore. But if I have intention that this will be a shelamim, that's okay. Got it? Because the improper intention actually undoes the Passover designation, and then I can eat it as a shelamim sacrifice.
Is it really improper, or you're just changing your designation?
Exactly. It's like opposite day, right? Because on Pesach, it needs to be for the sake of Pesach. When it's not on Pesach, then although the default is it's a Passover sacrifice, because that's what I said it was going to be before, I have to undo it by saying, no, now it's a shelamim, right? I must undo it in order for it to be kosher.
But you're doing that with intentionality.
It's the right thing to do. Yes. Right. Okay. Even though it's the opposite of what I first designated, it must be done that way. Okay. So this is a unique situation. There's no other sacrifice like this where you must designate it incorrectly in order for it to be valid. Okay. So now the question is, what about mixed intention when you're not on the 14th, right? So this 2 weeks later, and I say, I do shechita on this animal for Pesach and for Shelamim. Now, what do we mean, right? So the same question as we had before, but now in reverse. Before we said mixed intention is no good, but how about here? Is mixed intention in this case okay? Or is it the same as over here and also not good? We're going to see four opinions. Rav Dimi is going to say it's invalid as a mirror image, just like the case we had on Pesach as no good. So to this case. Rav Yirmiah is going to say it's valid because in this case the redesignation is weaker. Rava is going to say it's valid because we'll see his proof. Rav Ada is going to say it's invalid, and Rava is going to come back at the end and reinstate his proof that it will be valid. Okay, so let's see these 4 interpretations. Mahu, one different day of the year, I had in mind a mixed designation. What is the law? Does the intention that it will be not a Korban Pesach undo the intention that it is a Korban Pesach and thereby make it valid or not? Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said, oh, we discussed this question, and here's the argument that I said in front of my teacher, Rav Yirmiah. There's a mirror image. Having intention for Passover is what makes it valid on Pesach. Having intention not for Pesach is what makes it valid not on Pesach. So they're the same. Just like having proper intention on Pesach does not undo the improper intention, right? The improper intention invalidates it. So too, the intention that will not be Passover sacrifice, not on Pesach, is not powerful enough to undo the designation that is also a Pesach, a Korban Pesach, which was the wrong thing to say. And therefore, mirror image, they're both pasul. When I said that to my teacher, Rav Yirmiah, he told me back, אמר לי לא, אם אמרת בשלו לשמו, שכן נוהג בכל הזבחים, תאמר בלשמו, Sheken eno noheg ela noheg bechol hazevachim ela b'Pesach bilvad. It's not a proper analogy, because doing something without the intention, that redesignate it not the way it was actually designated at first, that's something that applies for any korban. Korban chatat. I say this is going to be a korban chatat, then I have to go through and do the shechita and kabbalah, all for the sake of korban chatat. The korban pesach is the only exception where when it's not Pesach, I need to have intention different from the designation, and therefore that redesignation is weaker than it is for all the other sacrifices. And therefore, when it's not, when I have something that's not during the on Pesach, and I think of it as a korban shalamim, that designation may be weaker than the other one, than the other all year round. So it could be that the one on Pesach is pasul, but the one not on Pesach would be okay. They're not necessarily the same. Okay, so that is rejected. So my have ala. Okay, now we're still stuck. We rejected that argument. Amar Rava Pesach shechechato b'sharimot hashana shelo lishmo v'shelo lishmo kasher tehastamo lishmo ka'eh. So here's his proof. When during the whole rest of the year, when I designated with mixed designations, it should be kasher. Why? Because let's say I didn't do anything at all. The default is lishma. It's for korban pesach, because that's what I made it. I made it korban pesach when before Pesach. So va'afilu achi ki shachit le'shelo lishma kasher. And nevertheless, when it has that default designation, if I come and say it's a shalamim, that's okay. So I'm going to take the default as a mixture, as one intention. Default is a Pesach, and then I come say not a Pesach, and so that's okay. So therefore, just like a default is mixes with the improper intention and makes it valid, so too, even if I say it out loud that this is going to be a Pesach, and then I say it's not a Pesach, it should be the same. In other words, he's saying that just use the default as an example of a case where I had the designated as a Pesach, whether I assumed the default or I said out loud, should be the same. Alma ateshelo lishmo umapik le midi lishmo. So having the intention not as a Pesach can come and undo even when I designate it, just like it can undo at the default. So too, even when I actually do shechita, first for Pesach and then not for Pesach, it should be able to undo it just like it undid the default. Okay, that's Rava's explanation. But this is rejected. No, maybe it's different when I actually say it out loud that this is for Pesach. Maybe that's much stronger than if I just assume the designation. And what's this proof? In the next Mishnah, if I say for people that can eat and for people that cannot eat, it's kasher. Why? But if I do shechita only for those who cannot eat, pasul. So you see that the default is not the same as an express statement that's improper, right? If I say for those who cannot eat and those who can eat and those who cannot eat, it's okay. But if I just assume the default is for people that can eat, right? And then if I say explicitly for people that cannot eat it, it's pasul. So the default is not as strong as actually saying something expressly. Right? Even though here the default was for those who can eat. Saying something explicitly is stronger than not saying it. So to here, Rava, you cannot compare the mixing with improper intention with a default with improper intention and proper intention. Okay. Amale midi idia. So Rava says back to him, hold on, that's not the same. You can't compare the next Mishnah with our Mishnah. Bishla ma'atam kema de lo akar le bishchita stame vadai lishmo ka'eh. Elahacha setame leochlav ka'eh. Right. In the case where I'm doing shechita for the sake of it being Passover and not a Passover. This is when we're talking about when it's 2 weeks later, when it's not on Passover. So there, as long as I don't undo it, so it's going to be assumed that's for Korban Pesach, because that was my original designation. And so that original designation is worth something, right? But until I undo it. However, here, setameh, if I don't say anything, is the default really designated for those who can eat it? It's not. Because people can come in and out of the registration as long as it wasn't slaughtered, right? In other words, let's say we have a meeting and everybody comes to, okay, who wants to join my Korban Pesach? And then 10 people come say, we'll join. Great, so they're on my list. But then I'm on my way to do shechita, and now they change their mind. No, I want to go with that guy. Someone else joins. It's okay. They can come and go until the minute that I do the shechita. Therefore, the intention while I'm doing shechita cannot be for specific people because they come and go. And therefore, there's no default intention for those people. And so you can't compare default in the next Mishnah with the one here. Ditnan, Nimnin moshchin et yedehem imenu ad sheishachet. The people can register and unregister as long as the shechita was not done. And so for that Mishnah, there is no a sense of default, but here there is a sense of the default status. And therefore, just like the default status when is for Pesach, and then when I combine it with not for Pesach, they combine together, and I say it's not for Pesach and therefore valid, right? So too, even if I say it explicitly, this is for Pesach and not for Pesach, it should be fine. And that is the answer we end up with. So what we have in the end is that on Pesach itself, if I have a mixed message, it's not clear if I do shechita for Korban Pesach and then I say not for Korban Pesach, we didn't answer that question. But if it's not Pesach and I want to make this animal that I had designated already for Korban Pesach and undo it, first I say it's Korban Pesach. Then I say, oh, no, it's not a Korban Pesach. Then that would be fine. And we can eat that korban as a korban shelamim. Baruch Adonai l'olam, amen ve'amen.